fam, welcome back. In today's video, I am so excited to talk to you guys about the brand new Menagerie Sugar High palette. I'll be discussing my first impressions after swatching this palette, my take on the new formula and style of the palette, sharing a demo of this eye look with you, as well as talking with you about how the shadows perform. So if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and stay tuned. We're gonna get into it right now. May not know, this year I went on a no/low buy. This is the very first eyeshadow palette that I have purchased in 2022. So that should definitely tell you something. In fact, one of the main reasons that I wanted to do a low buy this year instead of just a strict no buy is in the event that Menagerie released a palette. I love Menagerie so very much. They are an indie brand and they have one of my absolute favorite formulas. This Sugar High palette was inspired by the Sugar Glider. Menagerie often does have palettes themed after animals, and the owner does have a little sugar glider named Ruby. Definitely check out Menagerie's Instagram if you want to see clips of Ruby. She is absolutely adorable. One of the first things that I noticed about this palette is that it is smaller than Menagerie's typical palette. Indigo Ink was their newest release prior to the Sugar High palette, and as you can see, it's quite a bit smaller and it's also quite a bit thicker. Another difference with this palette is that the Sugar High palette has circular pans. Menagerie's fairly known for their square shaped pans, so this is definitely a whole new look for the brand. I also do want to point out though, for the same price, you're getting a bit less in this palette. This palette is only 18 grams of product, where their typical palette is 24 grams of product. So that was a bit of a point of contention for me, though it's not a big deal. I mean, many of us are not going to go through an entire eyeshadow palette. I also did notice that there is a new formula in the Sugar High palette, and I definitely have some thoughts. Now, I will say personally that Menagerie has one of my absolute favorite formulas. I love their palettes, but I have heard some common complaints within the beauty community about their mattes having a lot of kick up and their shimmers being a little bit, I don't know, maybe chunky or thick. I personally love their formula. While their mattes having kick up is a little bit maybe less desirable, they are so highly pigmented and beautiful. The color that you see in the pan is what you get. And even though they're high impact shades, they're also very blendable. In terms of the shimmer, I've heard people complain maybe that they're a little bit opaque or a little thick. For me, that's my preference. So I've never had any beef with their formula. Like I said, they're one of my favorites. So to talk about the new formula within the Menagerie palette, I had a couple different experiences with it. I had the experience of swatching it, and then I had the experience of applying it. So first I want to talk about how I felt swatching the palette. The first thing that I noticed is there is no longer any kick up in the mattes. However, when I was swatching them, I had to layer them like 4 times to get the shade to really show up. They're a little bit harder pressed. They're definitely less pigmented from a swatch perspective, and that's on bare skin, not eyeshadow primer. I also do want to point out that the blue shadows definitely did stain my fingers, but that's not an abnormal occurrence for Menagerie. They are kind of known to stain. But I will comment they didn't stain my arm, which was interesting. The shimmers are really beautiful. They're no longer that thick, opaque formula that I'm used to, though they are still opaque. They were just a lot smoother, but still very impactful, just not as textured as they used to be. Personally, like I said, I love their original formula, so for me, a change to that isn't really like necessarily what I was looking for. But like I said, I have heard a lot of complaints about the kick up in the mattes, as well as the thickness or texture nature of their shimmer. So if those are things that bothered you too about Menagerie, you may really like this new formula. I was, however, pleasantly surprised when I went to apply the formula. Now, this was done on my eyelid with a brush over an eyeshadow primer. I personally love using the Glam Lite Eye-cing eyeshadow base. I've been using this for months and months, and this is what I use essentially before I do any eye makeup. I trust it. It always works really well. And I will say, over an eyeshadow primer, I was much more impressed with the new Menagerie formula. The new mattes are definitely more of a buildable formula. However, if you're not as comfortable with highly pigmented mattes, you may really enjoy that. It definitely gives you a lot more control when you can build up a shadow than one that is very pigmented from the onset. I found that the mattes did layer really beautifully. I definitely got full impact, but I would have to dip in a couple times. But like I said, if you prefer a more buildable formula, I think you might really like that. I definitely felt like I had more control. I also did like that the shadows were just as blendable as they always have been. The buildable quality definitely made it a lot more user-friendly. I also did not use any glitter primer because I wanted to see how the shimmers would perform just by themselves. And I do think that they went on really beautifully, even without a glitter primer. I'm sure if you used a glitter primer, you would have a lot more impact than I have, but I felt that I got really nice impact right on top of the matte without a glitter primer. If you like more of a wash of shimmer instead of a very opaque shimmer, I think you'd really love these shimmers. I think that they're quite beautiful. I was much more impressed with the application process than I was with the swatching process. I was a little bit scared and disappointed and a little frustrated with the complainers that I heard about Menagerie's formula when I first was swatching, because I'm like, tell me they did not ruin this amazing formula that I love so much. But in the application process, I was so impressed. I thought they were really beautiful. I am obsessed with this look. I think it came out better than I even could have imagined. I really adore it. I think it's really fun. And overall, I was really happy with my experience using this palette. Now, it is currently sold out. However, Menagerie does do restocks. So if you think you might enjoy this palette, I would definitely highly recommend it. So now without further ado, let's go ahead and create this look. So I hope that you guys enjoyed seeing this demo. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on Menagerie Sugar High palette. I think this is so adorable and I'm so excited for Menagerie. It's amazing to see what they could do with their old formula. It's amazing to see what they can do with their new formula. And they remain one of my absolute favorite brands. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Is this a palette you have your eye on? Have you tried Menagerie? Do you prefer their old formula? Are you excited for the new formula? I can't wait to hear all of your thoughts in the comments down below. I thank you all so much for being here with me today. I love you all so much, and until the next video, bye-bye.